welcome you to the next session, the IT New Venture Roundtable. My name is Carlos Fradera. I am the General Manager of Barcelona Digital Centre Tecnològic, Technology Center. We are the Catalan Center focused on IT, one of the assets of the 22@ district in Barcelona. We are a member of the Tecnio Network. Our day-to-day work is research, development, and innovation in IT, working together with the Catalan companies and with the international centers. So, it's really a pleasure to have the opportunity to introduce the speakers of this session. You are going to listen to the following speakers: Mr. Andrew Mitchell, Andrew Mitchell is the Senior Business Development Executive at University of Edinburgh, a project leader in informatic ventures. You say, supporting and inspiring globally ambitious software companies in Scotland. I like the podium of elevator speeches in your web. It's very useful. Mr. Carlos Domingo. Hey! Carlos Domingo, Director of Internet and Multimedia of Telefónica Research and Development, based in Barcelona, his home city. Carlos came back to Barcelona more or less 4 years ago, after 15 years abroad, especially in Tokyo. Congratulations. Congratulations also for your recent award in the bdigital Global Congress. Miguel García-Gosalvez. Director of Technology Services and Senior Advisor at Casals&Associates. He's a leading member of a team providing initial rapid response capabilities in emergencies, world-class post-conflict and transition programs, and solutions for long-term development, taking always account the emphasis on building local capacities. Casals&Associates is a DynCorp international company, a global government services provider. Our fourth guest is Jeff Hoffman. Jeff is founder and CEO in the Priceline.com family of companies, an entrepreneur and innovator in the fields of internet, e-commerce, and entertainment. Jeff is currently a partner in ColorJar, the founder also, a venture accelerator firm that helps companies and small business to growth. Our fifth speaker, Manel Sarasa. Manel Sarasa is leading Openbravo. Openbravo, you know, is the web-based commercial open source ERP, the solution for small and medium companies. Manel is responsible for corporate strategy, general management, and international expansion. Now, he came to Openbravo after 7 years ago. You were in Diamond Cluster. And finally, the moderator of this roundtable will be my friend, and a friend, as I know also a lot of you, Mr. Ken Morse. Ken Morse, founding managing director of the MIT Entrepreneurship Center and also visiting professor at ESADE. Ken, there are some of my students at the university here in the room, and they can confirm you that I often remark you and your ideas in my sessions. So they can say that. Ken, thank you for being here also. Thank you for working hard in our ecosystem, not only today, but for a long time. And congratulations to all the speakers for what you have already done, and especially good luck in what you are going to do in the near future. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Carlos. So, your students, Carlos, are a little shy because I offered money to people who would sit in the front row. And I always thought students needed money, Carlos, but no, they didn't show up. So all of us on this team up here are fully aware of the fact that many of you have been in this room or in this fairground since 8:30 this morning. And we unanimously agreed that the first thing that you should do is stand up and stretch and take a minute to get the blood back evenly distributed in your body. Go ahead and stand up, guys. And this is a chance for those students who were hesitating and wanted that money to come on up to the front row, and you know, because the game's not over yet when it comes to the money. Do we hear any students coming up? Good, good. So the format that we decided would be productive, and to make it easier for you, the audience, is for us to provide 3 cosmic insights, okay, at least within our galaxy, but major breakthrough concepts that you can take with you to guide your strategy and planning for the next 20 years or so. And I'm going to ask each of the panelists to share their cosmic insights, and then we'll have a conversation about it. And the last half hour is set for questions and comments from the audience. And since I still teach MBAs, I'm very comfortable cold calling. So if there aren't any good questions, I'm just going to call right on this row there and that row there. But I think we'll get good questions. So Miguel, why don't you start out with the 3 cosmic insights?
Okay, first of all, let me say thank you to the organization for bringing me back here. I'm humble of being here. This is the city where I went to school. I'm a ESADE graduate. And also, in a previous life, I was a professor at ESADE for 8 years. Then, as many things in life, I went away, and I do live now in the United States and work for Casals&Associates. I know it sounds Catalan, but it's not. It's a brand of Dyncor International. We are a 30,000 employee company, $3.5 billion annual revenue, and we provide services to the U.S. government, basically only in aviation, contingency operations, infrastructure, intelligence, international development, land systems, logistics, and training and mentoring. In that arena, I deal every day with over 29,000 employees in the most remote locations of the world, many of them under a war situation. So for us, IT and communications is an important tool. So how do I see these 3 cosmic ideas or kind of gold mining for the future? One, for me, is the explosion of the touch interface. And when I say that, I don't mean just because the iPhone or the iPad, they're cool gadgets right now, which they are, but I'm saying because I think the touching capability adds a new dimension to our daily work in terms of it forces developers to create applications that, for the most part, do not require any manual. You don't need to read anything. It's a lot of intuition into them. And I think that's going to be an explosion for the future, not just for the phones, but many other things. To be able to operate things with our hands without the need to read any manual. The other one, although not directly an IT, but I think it has a consequence, which is the ability to work from anywhere. And as an example, I'm going to put myself. I live in Madison, Wisconsin, which is 2,000 kilometers from where my office is, which is in Washington, D.C. So I don't go to the office every day. I work most of the time from home or from overseas or from one of those seats answering my email. And the idea of ability to work from anywhere, I don't mean just teleworking. I mean be fully functional anywhere. And at least what I do, and I think most of you will agree with me, 90% of what I do with a computer is just email, maybe some spreadsheets, maybe some word processing, and maybe some PowerPoint. But for the most part, it's email and few other things. And I don't need anything fancy. I need to be fully functional. And I think we are going towards that. And the other one that I wanted to mention, the other idea, is that we need to work towards innovation, but not just as a new gadget, and a new phone, or a new iPad, or a new computer. I think we need to go one step further, looking at innovation and the ways of making us more efficient and more effective. And that can be a new IT or not. There are other things that are innovation. Innovation is not just new things. Innovation can be improvements of the things that we already have. Innovation can be process improvement in the way we work. Innovation can be many different things. We can talk about longer battery life. We can talk about screen resolution. We can talk about connectivity anywhere. And all those things are innovation. And all those things, I think, touch all these things that I was talking about, the ability to work from anywhere. And I always try to make, and I've been here with all of you, many of you entrepreneurs, I want to push this idea that innovation is not just new hardware or new software. Those are components, but they are not the only thing. I mean, if I don't want to quote any brand, but I want to do it anyway. If you look at Microsoft 2003 and Microsoft 2010, there had been some evolution, but for me, what I do today, I was doing the same thing with the software 10 years ago. There have been some improvements, but most of the things that I do are exactly the same. In fact, I could be still using the old version and I would pretty much notice any difference. So innovation can go much beyond than just new releases of software or computers that are faster or more. There can be a lot of things. Anyway, I don't want to extend too much, but those are my 3 ideas.
Great. Thank you very much. And that's a lot I see a lot of people taking notes, so you're going to get to keep your job for the next hour here. Well done. And Carlos Domingo, why don't you go second and share your cosmic insights?
Okay. First, I also want to say thank you to Josep and Ricard for the wonderful host they're being here in the conference, and Ken for inviting me. Also for this nice setup we have here. As a disclaimer, even though this looks like a bar, this is not gin tonic. It's just water. The gin tonics were gratefully provided yesterday night by Ricard in his house. I don't know if he's there or he's still recovering. And well, Ken sent me an email a few days ago saying, well, Carlos, prepare 3 cosmic insights for the panel. And I was reading the email saying cosmic insight, and when I hear about cosmic, the thing that comes to my mind is the movie Armageddon, where there's this cosmic asteroid that is approaching the Earth, and it's going to hit the Earth, and it's going to create an apocalyptic event, and it's going to destroy some things. So I thought, like, well, instead of 3 cosmic insights, what I'm going to do is just tell you what kind of asteroids are on the cosmonauts, and how, what they're going to hit on Earth, and what they're going to destroy for good on the IT world. Okay? So, are there any CIOs in the room? Anyone that works as a CIO or in the IT department? No? Okay, so my first apocalyptic insight is that CIOs are going to lose their jobs and are going to disappear within the next 10 years, as well as IT departments. Most of you, if you're not in IT, then you're probably very happy, because I don't know anyone that actually likes the IT guys. They're always the guys that get on the way of getting things done and things working in companies. And obviously the asteroid behind this major trend is what has been already mentioned, is probably going to be mentioned more here, which is cloud computing. I was reading the other day an article that said that by 2012, 30% of the companies will not have IT assets. All their IT assets will move to the cloud, and they will operate from there, which basically renders useless their job of the CIO, which their job is to keep the IT assets as complex and as cumbersome and as complicated to manage, so they have large teams and spend a portion and large portion of the money of the company, growing their teams for keeping the IT assets. So guys, CIOs are going to be gone. They're on a species in extinction. hopefully, and this is thanks to the beauty of cloud computing. So next one. Next thing, after you get rid of CIOs, if you start thinking, what else I want to get rid of in a company, and probably the majority of the answers will be procurement, because that's the other thing that gets on the way also of getting things done. And procurement people, like proprietary software companies, they like software licenses because it's a way for them to negotiate things, negotiate the license, and how much they're going to pay, what is the maintenance, et cetera, et cetera. So my next apocalyptic insight is software licenses are going to disappear. Why? Well, because there's another asteroid floating there, which is, as Manel will explain in more detail later, is open source. Who wants to use someone proprietary software when you want to have open source and you can have all these wonderful technologies that don't have software licenses, that if you have smart developers, like some of the ones I have the pleasure of having here, that can, by the way, my team is all sitting in first row. So they're very obedient. They're not like Carlos' students. So if you have smart developers, you don't need to actually buy stuff from Oracle, because you can just get open source. There's enough good material in open source. You obviously need to have certain software skills to manage them. There's companies like Openbravo that will help you as well. And basically you can, some people like Manel claim that you can reduce cost. I will say you can switch where you spend money, which is good enough in my case. And you will get rid of software licenses. Either you will move to the cloud everything, so someone else is managing your software assets for you, or if you still want to keep software assets in-house, you will use open source, because this is what makes the most sense. All right, and the third one is something that Miguel actually has already stole from me. This is the problem when you're second. Unfortunately, there's some ones that are fourth and fifth, so I don't know what they're going to say after us. But so the third one is about the workplace. So the major asteroid that is there, that is going to hit the Earth and destroy the workplace as we know it, is mobile internet. Because as Miguel already said, I think mobility is going to allow workers to work in a very, very different fashion. It's going to allow you to work from everywhere. And my team, there's some people there like Pablo and Nuria that have I don't know if the pleasure or the pain of working with me and never seen me. Because I work everywhere. I was in Madrid this week, I'm here, and I'm going there. I have my iPhone, I have the iPad, and I have a wonderful 3G connection from my company that I don't pay for. There's Wi-Fi sometimes, so I don't need to, unlimited data. I don't know if it's unlimited or not, but certainly it's free for me. If it's not free, it's getting very affordable, and it's going to get more and more affordable. The telecommunication industry, unfortunately, is one of the few industries that is deflationary, so prices are coming down every year. So these will get cheaper and cheaper and faster and faster. And devices are also getting much better. The iPhone was the first revolutionary device, but now we have iPad, we have Android phones that still rough on the edges, but they're getting there, and eventually, they'll be usable. So people will also have options with the smartphones. And this will allow you to basically work from everywhere. And work meaning doing productive work. That's the most important thing. It's not just actually making a phone call, but actually producing documents, reading PowerPoints, editing Excel files, all these interesting things that executives do in companies. And this will be the third major revolution that I think is going to happen on the IT world.
Great. Thank you, Carlos. And many of us who were here last night and had trouble getting away from here was due to the fact that Telefonica very graciously sponsored the reception and the elevator pitching. And it was some of the best foie gras that I've had in a long time, and jamon, of course. So we want to thank you for setting the right tone of culinary quality in this mobility that we had and moving around during the pitching. So I think, Andrew, we have in mind you going, and then Manel from open source, but Andrew?
Yeah, I'd just like to thank the conference organizers as well, because it is a privilege to be here. My second time in Barcelona, and I really do love this city. I've probably got the most hair or the least grey hair here, so I feel like I have to work harder to give my ICT credentials. So I started coding in 1982 on my Commodore VIC-20 in between school breaks, and I've moved on to IT-related jobs at Accenture, working on their intranet, and with British Telecommunications on a project I'll come on to in one of my Cosmic Insights. I'm now based at Edinburgh University's Computer Science Department, which is the largest computer science department in Europe, and it's the best rated in the UK by a factor of 2. But what we're trying to do there is get more commercial and entrepreneurial success out of the school because we haven't got a great track record. So we're trying to organize some of the chaotic ecosystem that Jerome Engel was talking about at the Media Roundtable this morning. So we're about entrepreneurship education, and I work within a larger tech transfer team. So in the last 3 years, we've done about £2 million in licensing deals, 6 spin-out companies, and supported about 27 startups. So we're starting to create quite a buzz there. So my cosmic insights are less apocalyptic and more about opportunity recognition, I think. The number one cosmic insight is that Gov 2.0 is the next big wave, the next big opportunity, and it has been for the last 15 years. I remember in British Telecom when we talked about cloud computing or cloud, it was when we drew a network diagram and we didn't understand what to do, so we just drew a cloud. That was cloud computing to us. But in 1999, I worked for a web team in BT that had done, by applying intranet and web technologies within BT PLC, had saved, and this was audited savings of £1 billion per annum. And when we applied that, we started looking at government and public services, and we reckoned we could save the UK taxpayer £13 billion per annum. Now, in 1999, there was a white paper published by the UK government saying that every transaction that could be electronic, like applying for a passport or getting a new driving license, changing your address at your home, things like that, if it could be electronic, it had to be by 2005. It gave them 6 years to try and transform and modernize government. Now, here we are in 2010, and there's been a complete failure to deliver on that. But there's more pressures coming up. So I think there is going to be a government-driven opportunity with IT. I think there's more demanding consumers of public services out there, especially as more generations move on. We've also got things like open data in the UK. The Royal Mail are open sourcing or putting out openly postcode data. The Ordnance Survey are putting out for free maps of the UK, things like that. So the open data movement is huge. Even things like terrorism, I think, is driving data and IT efficiency in government. But the big one is the global economic crisis, and I think that is the next big thing. So Gov 2.0. Cosmic insight number two. I think the whole area of human-computer interface is going through a kind of enlightenment period, or it's starting into an enlightenment period. And I think there's huge opportunity there. So if you look at things like e-readers, Amazon's Kindle, iPads, it's changing the way that people interact with IT for the better. And also things like companies like Plastic Logic in Cambridge. Now, Ken, you've got a vested interest in Plastic Logic as an LP with Amadeus. So they've had, I forgot to ask you this earlier on, $200 million of investment so far, or is it 250?
Yes.
Yeah. Now, I don't think Ken and his other investors are going to get a return on investment on their reader product. But it's game-changing technology, and they're going to get a massive return on investment in an area that hasn't been identified yet. The whole concept of plastic computing is phenomenal. So the return will come, and it's game-changing. Another one to watch in the human-computer interface space is light blue optics from Cambridge as well, so mini projectors. And the whole kind of, we had a talk from someone from the Media Lab earlier as well. The whole concept of bits and atoms and the marriage of that is a huge opportunity, and I think it's just starting to become real commercial opportunity. So there's a book I would recommend by the late Michael Detuzos called The Unfinished Revolution, and it's about inverting the user-slave relationship that we've got with computers. An example in his book is, if when your Windows machine, I'm an Apple fanboy, I have to confess. When your Windows machine crashes, when you reboot it up, it gives you into trouble for not turning your computer off properly, things like that. The relationship between computers and humans is all wrong, but it's changing. So that's cosmic insight number two. Human-computer interface, a massive entrepreneurial opportunity that's just starting to take off. the final cosmic insight is, if we look at big ICT projects that have happened worldwide, pretty much all of them have sucked. They've under-delivered, they've run over, they haven't delivered what they said they would do. It's run over budget, run over time, everything. And they've sucked mainly because IT departments don't put people at the center of what they're doing. So I think Carlos is right about the death of CIOs, or not the death, the firing of CIOs, and we can turn them from CIOs into salespeople, and that will solve the big people project. So that's why I've been working with Ken for the last 10 years on trying to coach high-tech entrepreneurs in sales. So that's my three.
Firing them is not enough, because they might be rehired by someone else. It's better if they're killed.
Firing them with an actual weapon.
With an actual weapon,
yeah,
that's fine.
So we've had two panelists basically promoting this revolution, throwing off the chains of slavery that IT managers have too long shackled us with. And I just want to say that turning IT managers into salespeople will probably be like teaching pigs to dance. We won't be successful, and we'll annoy the pigs. So, but anyway, that's kind of what I think we all think about IT managers. And the sooner the better, that maybe they should disappear into the cloud and be exported out of the galaxy. Very good. And which certainly brings us to a guy who is walking the talk and making the world safer for us citizens in Openbravo. Manel?
Thank you. So thank you so much as well, Ken and organization, for inviting me here. For me, it's a pleasure to be close to my hometown, because I'm from Girona, and actually I live here in Barcelona. And in my last 15 years of experience, I've been always abroad, and I don't always have the opportunity to be here with some of my friends, so thank you. So Cosmic Insights, I think that the good thing of Cosmic Insights is that normally are disruptive, and through disruption, obviously, opportunity comes. And I would like to link some of my predictions, which are similar to some of the predictions that have been already set, to actually real opportunities and real startups that probably are happening close to where we are right now. And actually, my first prediction is about the cloud as well. So I 100% agree that, in fact, the computer and the applications will be in the cloud. I'm so sure that this is like this, that actually when you asked the question about CIOs, no CIO was in the audience, so probably this already happened. But in any case, you know, with internet connectivity, with actually the economic advantages of having servers managed by companies that accumulate the management of more servers, by more and more seeing those applications that are already working very well on the cloud, and actually having a mashup of applications on the cloud as well. You know, everything will be in the cloud. So I 100% agree with Carlos. And just to link it, for example, to a young startup, but actually very well known already in the space, there is a great company here in Barcelona called iOS, that actually what they do is an operating system on the cloud. So this is a great example about how this, you know, future disruption is being leveraged by some local entrepreneurs to create a global company. And, you know, I would like to congratulate the people at iOS for what they are doing. The second, actually, prediction is about how enterprise software is going to change. And here, you know, I have a clear vision that to work should be fun. And work is not always fun, right? And probably if you ask yourself about what is the happiness that you get when you use Twitter, or you use Facebook, or you use Google Maps, probably everyone is happy about the user experience that you get and about the usage of these applications. And probably if I ask you how happy you are about using corporate IT systems like SAP or whatever, you know, your degree of satisfaction will decrease enormously, right? So I think that more and more enterprise software will be adopting the best practices that we are seeing in consumer software. And we'll see a trend of consumerization of enterprise software. And a good example of that is when Salesforce bought Chatter. Actually now, Salesforce is integrated with a Facebook-alike functionality where users of Salesforce communicate with other employees, with you know, external clients, and actually leverage the good thing of an application Facebook-alike. You know, I think that we'll see this more and more, and to work will be more fun, right? A good example of a startup in Barcelona that is doing this as well is a company called Teambox. Teambox is actually a very young startup as well that has created a Twitter-alike project collaboration tool, open source as well, but it's Twitter-alike, and it's fun. It's fun to use it. It's fun to manage your projects with Twitter, and it's innovation, right? It's the kind of innovation that sometimes we are not seeing in enterprise software. And obviously, my third prediction is about open source, of course. So again, I agree with some of the predictions that have been set here. And I predict that Microsoft will disappear in 10 years and or less, and that Apple has the risk to become a niche player if they do not open up their minds to reality. And basically, reality for me is that open source is not only that open source is less expensive, it's better quality, and, well, I'm not going to sell it to you, but it's not only that open source brings a lot of advantages, but the biggest advantages that open source brings is that freedom is a better business model in the world of in the 21st century world of software, right? And why do I say this? Because for a company like us or any other commercial open source company, we leverage the economies of scale of having an open source edition of our product that travels freely around the world, that is available for download. And as you can imagine, this changes two great aspects on our business model, which is that, one, it changes the way software is distributed and sold. We don't need to have large investments in marketing and sales, because actually there is a version of your product that is available for download, that users can download, that they can explore, that they can use, and if they like it, they can buy things around. And this changes the economics of distribution and sales. And the second aspect why this business model is better is because at the same time there is a big community around these projects which basically aggregates value in the development of software by innovating on top of us and innovating into creating new applications and new additions to our software that generate more value. And therefore, it reduces basically the engineering costs, and actually it improves the full development of software. No? So because freedom is a better business model, I believe that, that Microsoft and Apple will have big problems if they don't open up their minds and don't deliver this freedom to users. So these were my three predictions.
So you grew up in that time when the rock band said freedom's just another word for nothing left to lose, right?
Correct.
And you're also predicting that Microsoft is going down the tubes. I think it's probably a long tube, but anyway, it certainly gives a new, probably whets people's appetite for being niche players if they had the same size niche as Microsoft will have in 10 years. We've all talked about the rapid changes, the desire for freedom, throwing off the chains of slavery from both from the evil empire and from the CIOs, and that work should be fun. And I think this drive for independence mirrors the entrepreneurial drive, which we're seeing more and more in the West. Entrepreneurs still are working 24 hours a day, but they get to choose which 24. Okay, and that's probably a good lead-in to Jeff Hoffman, who has been working 24 hours a day since he was a kid, which means, the last 5 or 6 years. And Jeff, why don't you share with us your cosmic insights, please?
By the way, your computer crashed right when you made that comment about Microsoft. It was kind of weird. Your hard drive just went up in flames suddenly. So I'm going to give you a little bit of different perspective. I'm an entrepreneur. In fact, the proof that I'm an entrepreneur I just noticed was that I eliminated the inefficient middle step and I drank my water right from the bottle. That's what entrepreneurs do, and that's what I want to talk about today, is that entrepreneurs spend their time looking at processes and looking for places they can use technology to improve efficiency so they can fit into our larger ecosystem somewhere. Have they not invented video Photoshop? You can't make me look better than that? There's got to be some product out there.
The reruns, which we're going to be selling on eBay, will be touched up.
Just put
Jeff,
hair and stuff. I'll tell you how I want it to look. I'll Photoshop it myself. The first point that I wanted to make, so I was here in Barcelona in March. Obviously, I love this city as well. I was the commencement speaker at ESADE, and I got a chance to meet entrepreneurs, especially from the business classes, from, I counted, I think, about 48, 49 different countries. And since I've been here these couple of days, last night I stayed here late just sort of giving advice to entrepreneurs, which I love doing. And if there's some here today, I'll be around afterwards. That's what we're in town to do. So that's why I'm going to take a little different tack and give some advice for entrepreneurs, because a lot of people asked for that. So the first thing that I want to say in terms of a kind of an insight or a piece of advice is that your success is very much determined by the way you process the world around you, the way that you look at things. And I will tell you guys something that I do every single day that I would highly recommend to everybody because of the rate of change in the world that we live in. Every single day when I wake up, the first thing that I do, I don't answer all my devices. I don't answer the phones. I take the first 30 minutes of the day just to absorb information of what happened while I slept, assuming I did sleep that night. Technology changes so fast that every single morning something new is out there. Somebody created something, invented something, changed something, or regulations change, legislations changed, industries change. What happens when a company goes out of business? Where did all their customers go? Sounds like an opportunity to me. When companies merge, maybe their service level went down. The idea is every single morning, spend a few minutes and process the events of the business world and the government world and the world around you over here. Then spend a few minutes and just process the technology world. Read articles, look at press releases, click on stories. When I do this, I don't even have a plan. I just follow things that interest me, and I write down data points. And at the end of the day, at the end of the half hour, I pick up that sheet of paper and I look at both sides. And I ask myself this question every single day, which I'm going to challenge you to do. The question that I ask every morning is, what can I do today that I could not do yesterday? And the reason that's important for entrepreneurs is you're looking for a place where something disruptive happened in business or economies and something else happened in technology that enables you to plug that gap using technology, which creates an opportunity for the little person to get in there and fill a big hole. So that's your challenge, is to look at that daily. Look at that intersection between new technologies and new developments, and look at what's happening in the business world and see if there's something you could do today that opportunity didn't even exist yesterday. Why is that important for entrepreneurs, by the way? Because we can move a lot quicker than a large corporation. We better, or we have no value in the system. So when you spot an opportunity, you don't need the committee meetings and the budget approvals. In theory, you can jump right into it. And you notice that first mover advantage has made a lot of companies very successful out there, and they didn't even do it that well. In fact, you guys gave the perfect example. You did. Windows is not a great product, never has been, never will be, from what I can tell. It is not a great product, but that certainly didn't stop its world dominance. It had first mover advantage. That seems to work in many cases. Somebody saw an opportunity and moved quickly. The second piece of advice that I want to give is really having to do with value propositions and analyzing the entire food chain. And a lot of times, as an entrepreneur, I gather my team around and we do these brainstorming sessions where we take an industry and we just walk through its entire food chain. We go through the whole value chain and we try to figure out, is somebody getting overpaid? Is somebody getting underpaid? Is somebody getting paid just for transporting the water that didn't really add any value necessarily. We analyze a value chain and from the top to the bottom, and we try to see where there's an inefficiency. Because anywhere there's an inefficiency, there's some chance, this is an IT forum, there's some chance that I can replace it with technology much more cost effectively and make a lot of money doing that. The same exercise goes for, now I did some of the speed dating out there with entrepreneurs, and we've had venture capitalists here during the last 2 days as well. And when I sit on that side of the table, I'm amazed at how many times when somebody brings me a business plan and a business proposition, it's perfectly clear in their plan how they think they're going to make money, but they didn't go through the whole value chain, and somebody in there has to get really hurt for them to make money, and that may not happen. Those people are going to fight very hard for their spot on the chain. So what's important to do when you're developing a business is find one where everybody wins on the value chain. Let me give you a really quick example. I've been doing startups my whole life. When we did Priceline, I think that was the 5th technology startup company that I was involved in. But we had to really think about the value chain. The reason, Priceline was started with a handful of people and no money. And last year, just to give you an idea, last year, the 2009 sales were $9.3 billion and profits of $1.2 billion for whoever says internet companies can't make money. Why did that company win? Because we had a value equation that had no losers in it. The business was selling excess inventory, airplane seats and hotel rooms that currently generate $0 in revenue. And so going to the supplier saying you're inefficient, you can't sell all your inventory, we'll get you something for it. All right, $50 for an empty room is better than $0. So the supplier wins because they didn't get retail price, but they got $50. They would have had $0 otherwise. And the consumer wins because they couldn't afford to stay at $200, but for $50 they'll go. So we had a value proposition that both ends of the food chain got a victory. They both won. Nobody got hurt doing that. Everybody got helped. And in the middle, there was enough spread for us to actually fund a company to do this and make a living doing it. So really studying the value chain is really, really critical, and looking for industries that have inefficiencies that you can jump in and fix with technology. And the last thing I want to talk about really is team. I've been trying, I love coming to things like this because it helps me expand my knowledge base, talking to entrepreneurs from so many different countries. And I understand that we all have cultural differences, and our products have to represent those in the marketplace when we deliver them. But when people tell me that they can't succeed or they're not as equipped as an entrepreneur because of where they come from, I think that's just a cheap excuse. Okay, good ideas don't care where they were born. Good ideas don't care what country you're from, what language you speak, whether you're male, female, or anything like that. A good idea is a good idea no matter where it came from. The difference maybe sometimes that some of the U.S. teams might get off to a quicker start, I think, is there might be, and I might be wrong, I'm just giving you some advice, there might be a bigger focus on team building, on really working together and bringing more people into the picture and owning a smaller piece of a much bigger pie. So the ability to really assemble the team around you to deliver on your value proposition is absolutely critical. And I've met maybe too many entrepreneurs that were kind of trying to do it themselves. Unless you're a soccer star, I don't know ways you're going to make millions and millions of dollars all by yourself. So that's my bits of advice.
Those are great insights. And the question of the team and how entrepreneurial they are, whether they seize the opportunities, and maybe they should be processing what's new in the world around them together every morning over coffee, and how they would go after it as a team. You mentioned who in the value chain is going to get hurt, and who is going to have control over the value, and who's going to be marginalized or commoditized. And so one's always tempted to ask Carlos Domingo, since he was such a gracious supporter of the networking activity last night, is it the network? Is it the handset? How is Telefonica going to continue to make money in this IT environment and not get commoditized by forces of evil? And is open source a good thing or a bad thing for the phone company?
So the first thing is, obviously the network will have to be continuing something we used to make money, because it's the biggest asset we have, and where we've put a lot of investment over the years. I think the main difference is probably the revenue you make with the network won't necessarily come from voice, which is the majority of the usage of the network today, but it will come more and more from broadband, and especially on the mobile side. I think it's going to completely substitute the voice by data, and eventually voice will be just one data services. So it will be all data services, voice being one of them. But I think the main challenge we have is then keep adding services where we make some money, because today there's lots of services on our data networks, but we don't tend to make any money because there's someone else providing those. So how do we open up assets we have on the network that integrate with those people that are providing services, so we actually get a little bit of share of those services? Because I don't think as telcos that us providing internet services is going to be competitive. I think we all see Facebook today and we think, wow, it's really cool, I should have done Facebook, but there were probably 100 companies trying to do Facebook. They were, prior to Facebook, it was MySpace, FriendFeed, et cetera, Friendster, and they didn't succeed. So I think it's much better than open up our assets and let other people use it. And in terms of open source, which is the second part of the question, I think that internet companies are very good to they're very good using open source because they are basically high volume, low margin businesses. Going back to Facebook example, it's 500 million customers, but the ARPU per customer is ridiculous, maybe $2 a year. So telcos have the luxury that have high volume, high margin. Therefore, they can afford to not use open source today. But certainly, if you look at the history of how telcos have grown, their number of users and the usage has grown faster than the speed at which rates are dropping. But it's definitely a deflationary market, and that will continue to happen. So we need to continue adding users, and rates will continue dropping. And then eventually you will have less ARPU and more users, and then you will have to be more efficient because you will be on a high volume, low margin businesses, and then software, open source, etc., will necessarily have to be an asset that you manage to be more efficient, which today, in some cases, you have the luxury of not being it. So.
Right, and you left out the generous, rapacious governments that look at the not having other sources of money, look at licensing spectrum to the phone companies and putting it out to auction, and just when you've been hit from one side and hit from another, the governments come in and ask you for another $4 billion just to stay where you are. A real Alice in Wonderland situation. But Manel, can you explain for us, if you give the software away for free, how do you make money? I'm old-fashioned. My dad taught me when I was growing up. He said, Ken, if you sell below cost, there's no way to make it up on volume.
So
how does this thing work?
It's easy.
It's easy. Okay.
We do magic.
It can't be too easy. I hope there's some barriers to entry for you, Manel, because you owe me that dinner. I want you to be able to pay for it. Good. Okay. So.
So the concept is basically our core product is an open source product, which is available, as you were just saying, for download anywhere, anytime, and just as a matter of example, every month we get 30,000 downloads of our core product, right? So what people buys is a subscription similar to what Salesforce is doing, a subscription to our professional edition, which includes services that guarantee that the product will always work, that will get support if you have a problem, right? You have a company behind that gives you the guarantee that everything is going to be fixed if there is an issue, and that you will be always evolving into more functionality and more value with a simple offering.
And,
right?
And do the IT managers buy this? Maybe we found a use for them after all.
So at the end of the day, you should think that it saves the licensing acquisition cost because you don't need to acquire the software, and basically what you pay is similar to the maintenance fee you would be paying per year in any software, right? And with that you make money because at the end of the day you lower your distribution costs and you lower the development of the costs as well, right?
Good, leveling the playing field. By the way, Mario Girard is here from the Fondation de l'Entrepreneurship in Quebec. And the Quebec government recently annulled a large bid that they gave to Microsoft and said it had to be reopened so that open source could bid for a government contract. So those of you who are thinking about North America and an enlightened place to go, think about Quebec, right? And just if the government's doing that, imagine what's going on in the bars and the restaurants. So anyone want to comment on this? Andrew?
I mean, a dimension about the open source future is that some industries and organizations, companies, at the moment, their position is they just won't do it. So aerospace, defense, health won't touch it. Boeing won't buy open source. So have you got a view on that? Do you think that stance is going to change?
Yeah, for sure. I think we've seen already defense contracts, and we've seen contracts in these kind of industries. And I think going back to what we were discussing here, I don't think that proprietary software is evil, right? I think that precisely if open source is what it is today is thanks to the business model that you have around open source, and there's business around this. No? And at the end of the day, what we sell is precisely the safety that those organizations want to buy, right? They could fear of an open source project which is not fully backed by an enterprise, by a company. And if you warranty and if you actually basically explain well these clients that actually our business is on their safety, then obviously this doesn't become a problem anymore.
Yeah, and I wanted to mention for us, I think Microsoft is getting this idea and they are running a scare. To give you an example, in the US, if you go to any shop and you want to buy Microsoft Office today, a complete package for you at home to work, is about $479 for a full package. We are a big company, but we are not that big anyway. We are 30,000 employees. With Microsoft, I'm getting those same packages for $8.50 per year, and I get rights to any new release, any new distribution, I get it. So they are charging $479 on the street, and if you are not a heavy buyer, but a medium-sized large corporation, you can get it for $8. I think if they are going from that price to this price, it's because they're already seeing that the market is changing and they need to do something. Otherwise, they're going to get lost.
Okay, we have 15 minutes. I want to have a couple of more brilliant insights here, and then we're going to get some cosmic questions from the other part of the galaxy here. But Jeff?
I was just going to say it's that same sea change. It's the same shift in the value chain. People don't pay for software anymore, but they do pay for expertise and they do pay for security. My developers never want to buy software, but they will come to me quickly with consulting requests to have his guys be there so they know if there's a problem they can't solve, there's somebody to call. So again, there's always a way to make money. You just have to shift how you do it. Right. You don't make it selling me software, but you make it selling me security and intelligence. Support, right.
Carlos?
I just want to highlight another thing that Manel touched on a little bit, which is especially for small companies, both cloud computing and open source have a huge advantage versus other alternatives, which is they switch from CapEx to OpEx, meaning you don't need upfront investment, so you don't have to actually need to raise money, and you spend as you use. And so as you grow the company and as your needs of software are growing, then you're going to start spending money because theoretically you are producing revenue as well. And some companies are growing without producing revenue. That's a very unhealthy thing to do for companies. So please refrain from doing that. But the majority of the companies, as they grow and they get more customers, they need more IT infrastructure. And if they pay as they go, which is both what cloud computing offers you or what open source, where you have to pay for services gives you as well, is a much, much better value proposition. And I think this is one of the reasons behind why there's so many startups these days on the internet space, because it's very cheap to start a company. And Luis is there, and he knows that in some companies that we are present personally as angel investors, it's very, very little money you need to actually put to start a company, because you need only a few bright people to write some software, and all the assets and everything you need is on the cloud and it's open source. And then if the company gets bigger because it attracts more people, you generate more revenue and you pay a little bit in OpEx, and it scales very nicely. So,
right.
Can I throw in another a cosmic yell related to that? I don't think we can have an IT and entrepreneurship discussion at the moment without talking about BIBO and the value chain for investors. How can you go from $875 million to to basically zero bargain bin, or not even bargain bin. Be great to hear some of the views from the panel on that. So AOL bought it for 875 million, and it got sold, I think yesterday, for 2.5 pence.
AOL overpaid. Is that a good answer?
Yeah. Well, I think that's
CIO right there.
You have to fire the CIO and the CEO. They
all got fired.
That's a very uplifting example, Andrew. And so it's time for a little audience participation here. Why don't we start with the winner of the elevator pitch contest in Scotland on Friday. First question, please. You could just speak right into this microphone here, and everybody will be able to hear you.
Sorry, this question is for Carlos Domingo, and is a little basic on what sensors you think that will come up in the future to help you work and everywhere. And right now we have location in your phone, and like what sensor you think in the future we'll need. And a second question is like if the CIOs are out, there is any other operational area in the companies that you also see, the benefits of the cloud that you can leverage also?
What sensors do I see there? Well, I certainly see sensors popping up everywhere in both devices and everywhere in the cities. You probably don't realize, but the cities also are full of sensors. On devices, the most common ones today are location. The iPhone, for instance, has a sensor of proximity. So when you get actually closer to the device, it knows you're getting closer and it actually shuts down the screen. That's a proximity device that people are not leveraging for other applications, but it's actually there. It has a compass as well. What other things you could have? I mean, again, I like to think of fancy things like mood devices, mood sensors that detect your mood, noise detection devices that detect whether you're in a noisy place and don't put you the call and it plays it directly into your voicemail, so you don't take a call when you're in a very noisy place. Smell devices or weather devices, so it will adjust what you're doing depending on weather. And I think most important, beyond the devices and the sensors on the devices, I think is going to be what applications do with the information from those sensors to create context information. So location is a good example of the sensor itself is GPS. So you have a sensor here, but with a bit of intelligence, you could use the location to detect whether a person is working or a person is actually at home. And then based on that, change the layout of your UI on your phone, route your calls differently, et cetera, et cetera. And that's context that is added on top of the sensor. So it's not only the sensor that has value, but it's everything that comes around with it.
My phone's going to tell me when to stop drinking?
Yes. Actually, that's actually something that exists already as an add-on to some sensors that actually it tests your alcohol level. So for people driving after drinking, which is a bad habit, but some people do it. So.
Any? I see you. I know all about you. Any others? Okay, we have the. Very good. You're next.
First of all,
he's from Microsoft, so.
I found that this session on the innovation in IT was the most innovative in terms of the opinions and the speeches and so on. So I really appreciate that of all the sessions that in the last couple of days. And then it's pretty much true that IT itself is becoming the foundation for pretty much anything that's new, everything that's in existence today. So I want to ask the question, just turning around and look at what do you think is the fundamental part of, let's say, IT that has been out there and will continue to be there without much change, without much innovation in it?
Okay. Silicon.
Let's go plastic.
That's a good question.
The Internet Protocol.
No, I think we're going to still see, thanks to IT, the ability to communicate among each other. You may have changes on the way that is done, but I think that ability is going to remain. I mean, we are moving now with the new iPhone 4 or whatever. We are going to video conference. But I mean, we are always emphasizing on the same ability, which is the ability to communicate among each other. So we have now all the sensors that Carlos were talking. But basically what we're doing is sharing information with the cloud, with other people, with our friends, with our work. but IT remains the core for the exchange of this information in different fashions, more fancy way, but I think still today we cannot separate IT from communication.
You said what part have we not seen a lot of innovation, and it's a part you guys were talking about, which is I think it's in the human-computer interface. If you think back to the Arthur C. Clarke book and movie 2001: A Space Odyssey, I don't know when that was written, but back then, remember what they did was they said the computer had a name and they talked to it, and they said, "Open the door, Hal," and it said, "I can't do that." And we all thought that was coming anytime soon, and we still have to type absurd file names and double-click stuff and move icons around. The interface between us and our computers really hasn't evolved nearly as much as the books and movies and all of us thought it would in that number of years. So there's an area where I think innovation has been slow.
Good.
Hello. Unfortunately, I work for Microsoft, but I still feel very happy about my job.
But you work in cloud computing,
and
so
willing
that's
to admit it. We
cool
couldn't get any CIOs to admit it, but
well,
okay, way to go.
My question is around I think there's a tension between cloud computing and open source. If you look at a company like Google, for example, they're extensive users of open source software, but they don't share any of the software that they actually build because it's all hidden behind their cloud service. So when I hear people saying open source plus cloud computing, it almost seems like a contradiction because by moving to cloud computing, you're actually giving up almost complete control of the data that you're putting in the cloud versus in an open source model where you actually have complete control of the data because you have not only the data, plus you have the software and the ability to modify the software as you need to, regardless of what happens to the original company. I just wanted to ask what your thoughts were about that, Manel.
So, since I touched on both those questions, first I need a disclaimer. He works for Microsoft, but he works in cloud computing. So he works at the cool part of Microsoft, not the traditional one. And I think you're right to that point. And what I meant by cloud computing and open source being with both trends is because I don't think that 100% of companies will adopt cloud computing. And I think, you know, what I said is 30% of companies will 100% adopt cloud computing. The other 70% will adopt cloud computing for some things, but for some other things, they will keep their IT assets in private clouds. Because I think that's what makes more sense for certain data sensitives, also for regulation purposes. Sometimes you can't just move things to the cloud because you don't know where the data centers are, and you need to keep certain data in your own country, et cetera, et cetera. And in those cases, I think we will see more and more people using open source products for building, you know, whatever IT infrastructure they need, which will probably follow cloud computing paradigm type of computing, but it will be internal. So I think both are compatible, and it's true that the moment you move things to the cloud, you lose control over you know, how things are done, and perhaps they're done with proprietary software. But in that case, you've probably taken the decision that you don't care about that. You just care about getting service, and you don't care about how that service is provided. That's, I think.
And I think that here, maybe because of the conversation, we are talking, things are not black and white. I mean, there is a whole range of gray in the middle. And we are talking about hosted, I mean, we're talking about cloud computing and open source, but in the middle, for example, we are users of hosted applications, and it's Microsoft software hosted somewhere else. So it's still the software that we know, but we don't have to worry about maintaining. We don't have to worry about hardware issues. We don't have to worry about sources of power. We don't have to worry about generators. We don't have to worry about internet providers. And I don't have to pay prime real estate location to hold machines. I have it in the middle of Texas, literally. So, but it's still a hosted Microsoft application. So I think in between open source and the cloud computer, there's a whole range of gray things in the middle that kind of protect you.
Yeah. So short, I think that in 5 years' time, whenever I need to do my predictions, I'm going to say that in 10 years, Google will disappear, which might happen as well. But you know, probably it's more difficult than the other prediction. I think that the fundamental difference, if you look it from a user perspective, a cloud-based offering offers you a trial. And an open source product, which can be cloud as well, offered in the cloud, offers you a download, right? So at the end of the day, if For instance, if you look at it from a startup perspective, if you really want to sell a lot, you need to get very well known in the world of SaaS, in the world of cloud, by branding your company, still doing a great investment in marketing, because you need to actually generate traffic that becomes trial, that becomes in a lot of trial users that then are going to buy something, right? And in the world of open source, you can leverage the open source momentum and actually, if you have a great product, be on the top of the rankings of those hosted application spaces where you can become the number one, and actually you get an easier way to disseminate your product and therefore start the funnel from downloads to users to buyers, right? And from a developer's perspective, as you can imagine also, you go from a trial as well to actually having full access to the code and actually having the capability to build on that code in a different manner, right? So open source as well has, I would say, the advantage of changing the business model towards developing software, right, versus SaaS. Both are, I think, great business models, and both can be combined if you do it properly, right?
Can I just add something really quick to that? Since I've been developing software my whole life, all our businesses, here's how to answer your question from our perspective. Here's how it changed us. We used to write everything. We would draw a business on the board, and we would write all the software and buy all the equipment. Today, we draw a business on the board, we circle only the things that absolutely differentiate us in the marketplace, and then we open source and cloud everything else. So our business plan looks different now because of open source and clouds, but we still protect the things that are actually our asset value.
And all of this presents, we have our last question here, but all of this presents enormous opportunities too, as we move from 1 to 2 to 3% of the electric power and CO2 generated in the world by server farms that are supporting open source. And so where are you going to put them? And people are beginning to say, well, I want to have my open source in a place that's green, and I also want to have it in a place that's safe. And so into this fray steps an entire country, which is world-renowned for data integrity and world-renowned for powering server farms with geothermal energy. So not only is Iceland hosting almost a quarter of 1% of all of the data in the cloud, but exporting ash along with the cloud.
Luckily for the Mr. from Microsoft, it can be worse. I work for a bank. So as a bank, I have a question because I was puzzled by the remark from Mr. Hoffman from Priceline. Had to do with regarding the value chain and the replacement in the value chain. If you look nowadays, I guess mobile phones, that's the most important carrier for applications. I guess looking back 5 years or 10 years ago, it was plastic cards. If I would make it in kind of vector, then I would assume something even more or less intrusive. So I would be very interested to see, from your opinion, what would, in case you would be able to replace the mobile phone, by what would it be, and what kind of context would it be in?
Okay, one, if you can draw that vector, you're about to be a billionaire. Two, if you know the answer, don't say it. I'll talk to you privately. That's the billion-dollar question right there. I certainly don't know the answer to that. It's funny because so many things, you are exactly right. So many things that if we look back and all of us looked at PowerPoints we gave 5 years ago, it's amazing how much stuff we had no idea was about to happen. And every time we do try to predict it, it's extreme. So the bad news is, it is extremely difficult to predict what's going to come next, just because of the fact that innovation now takes place all over the world. I did a really quick side note. I did a Skype appearance in a class here in Barcelona at ESADE, and one of the students said to me, well, the environment's harder here in Europe for us to innovate and create products. And I said, how many of you think Denmark is the place you think of when you think of innovation, and nobody raised their hand. I said Skype was created by a 17-year-old kid in Copenhagen. So innovation happens so fast in so many places that you have no idea what is coming next. That's the bad news, but that's also the good news. The reason that a 17-year-old kid can create a company in Denmark and sell it for $1 billion 2 years later, whatever the Skype acquisition was, is because nobody knows what's coming next, so whoever spots it first and moves quickest wins. I mean, I don't have a good answer for what will replace that. You guys have any thoughts?
No, as Jeff said, I think if anyone knows that, please talk to me as well, because it's a very, very interesting one. And predictions are probably useless. I think in the VC panel yesterday, they said something very interesting. The most important thing for an entrepreneur is not to have a plan that they're going to follow for the next 5 years because they've seen the future. It's about how they're going to build the plan as they go and how they're going to evolve when the landscape is changing, because today no one is able to predict how things are going to change, and technology is coming up much faster, and also people adopt technology much faster, so things are moving very quickly. So I think rather than trying to predict the future, I think learn to adapt to change, and then you'll be successful. So.
Yeah, predictions are hard. One close to Telefonica's heart is the whole SMS business. Vodafone suggested adding in SMS just so their engineers could talk back to headquarters, and it was thrown in at the very last minute at the GSM standards. And look at the billions of dollars that that's generated for your company and others.
You know, I saw a whole bunch of business plans when instant messaging came out. Everybody was building an instant messaging device, and I said, let's wait till Monday, right? Because what happened Monday? Text messages and all the instant messengers died overnight, because why do you need to be tied to a computer to send a message? So SMS wiped out that instant messaging plan that a lot of people had. So you guys are right. You got to keep watching and move quickly.
Yeah, I mean, when I was a business school student, I mean, we used to do these spreadsheets with 5-year projection. Today, 6 months away is pure speculation. We don't know what's going to happen in the next few months.
Right. Well, at least you're not on Wall Street, where long-term planning is where we're going to go for lunch. I think this has been, you guys, when I was out there were people coming in, and I heard them saying, hey, those guys aren't brain dead at all. Maybe we should stay. So we've actually grown. Normally, the last panel of a conference, you know, things start to thin out, but they're still coming in. Right. But maybe that's because we've been the warm-up act for the guy from Google, and I think he heard that you were giving him only 10 years, so we'll see what he has to say. 15. I want to thank all of the members of this panel for being the magnet for talent from out of the coffee bar and back into the room, and for your cosmic insights, which will enable all the entrepreneurs in the audience to do a better job of planning their new ventures. Thank you, guys, very, very much, and thank you.